Police officers of Reddit. What's the creepiest disappearance case you've ever been assigned to? Not a cop, but I track missing persons accounts for a bank in coordination with the police. One day a cop called and said they wanted to track the accounts of a woman who had gone missing at the hands of a dangerous trafficker. The last transactions I could trace since she disappeared was at one of our branches. I pulled the footage and the trafficker was pulling a bunch of money from her account. I received an alert the next day from the account stating that a purchase was made. The purchase was from a hardware store. Shortly after, the next purchase was for a carpet cleaner rental. Needless to say, cops contacted us and says they suspect he killed her, but they couldn't locate her body. Irked me. Felt like I had witnessed murder through simple financial transactions. Not a police officer, but my granddad was. He was a part of the police force in the 60s till the early 80s. Sometime during the 70s he was assigned to a missing persons case that had been ongoing for a while and had actually been reassigned due to the lack of new evidence. Him and his partner spent months on the case fighting for it to stay open. One day they went and searched the missing person's home again. It caused a lot of uproar with the family as they hadn't really moved his things or been into his home since the case had gone quiet. Anyway, they got permission almost a month after asking and found a handwritten receipt for a car in his bathroom bin. God knows why his bins weren't searched before unless it was just missed. They managed to track down the guy who sold him the car. He said that the missing person had mentioned that he was going to store his car in a garage till he had the money to insure it. He even gave them the name of the town he said the garages were in. They went to the town and got search warrants for every single rentable garage, even though they had no evidence he had ever rented one. After a couple of days they found the car with the guy inside it. Apparently, his body was almost mummified because of the lack of sun, air and moisture. I can't imagine what the smell was like, but they think he accidentally killed himself while trying to do some work on the car. He would have had the garage door closed because his car wasn't insured. He didn't want anyone to see the car and steal it. It was stored in a rough neighborhood where the garages were cheap to rent. He also paid cash in hand, so he never had any receipts. So yeah, he died of carbon monoxide poisoning. It's painless and basically you just fall asleep and then you die. He wouldn't have realized until it was too late. The guy was missing for 5 months and he seemed to just disappear for no known reason. My granddad told me this when I was a kid and it really scared me that people can so easily just go missing or die and nobody knows where they're. Still kinda freaks me out. Brandon Lawson. He ran out of gas on the highway in the middle of the night and called his brother to come help him. Shortly after he called 911 and reported that someone had chased him into the woods and that he needed police. Eventually his brother and one police officer arrive at the scene and find his truck abandoned but no sign of Brandon. Brandon calls his brother and says he's bleeding and is 10 minutes away from his truck. That was the last anyone ever heard from him and searches of the area turned up empty. Not a cop, but had a pretty effed up disappearance happen about a mile away from where I live. A girl went missing. She was 12. The whole town, state police, and I believe possibly the FBI all got involved. Search parties in the woods and through the streets for about 2 or 3 days. Turns out she had gone over to these kids' house that she knew from school to have them fix her bike. Turns out the kids' brothers, one 15 and the other 17, planned on stealing it. Well, she put up a struggle and the one brother wound up strangling her in his basement. She was found a few days after she went missing. They stuffed her body in a trash can on trash night. My grandfather was a sheriff on the West Coast in the 70s. I don't know a lot of details because he never talked about it. But I know he was part of a team who recovered multiple sets of remains that turned out to be Ted Bundy victims. Apparently it was the most graphic thing he's ever seen. My mom was approached by Ted Bundy when she was younger. He asked for directions and wanted her to come show him on a map at his car. She said, "I'm not from around here, but my grandma is," and as soon as he saw grandma he took off. He was driving his VW and wearing a cast. Very scary to think about. Not exactly a cop, a former cop. In fact, I was a firefighter in the military. In the interest of self-preservation, I will not be discussing the base branch names of those involved. At this point in my career, I was the director of emergency communications for the base. This meant that I was in charge of police, fire, medical emergency and non-emergency communication. My main responsibilities included managing fire, police, EMS dispatches, maintaining and monitoring base alarm systems, and reviewing reports and cross-checking the respective reports with the 911 calls and radio traffic to ensure that everything was accurate. This last duty was the most time-consuming. It was impossible to screen every call, so non-high-priority calls were audited on a random basis, while high-priority calls were scrutinized in great detail. I spent many hours slowing down, speeding up, and trying to make heads or tails of high-profile emergencies. High-profile emergencies included things like unexpected, unexplained deaths, terror threats made, attempted, or threatened against the base, fires resulting in loss of life or significant loss of property, and a handful of other things. I add that footnote because typically, these 911 calls are chaotic. Oftentimes callers are experiencing the worst, most tragic or stressful time in their life. My point being, it's often hard to understand a caller, let alone despise what exactly they need. The incident. The dispatch center was manned 24/7 but only directly supervised during business hours. However, I was always on call for major incidents like those mentioned above. The night in question was a Saturday and it was fairly late. Around 1 a.m. I heard a call toned out over the radio for a reported suicide. The patient was pronounced dead on arrival. Suicides were one major incident that I was notified about by my dispatchers, but I was not always ordered to respond right then and there. Suicides were usually pretty cut and dry. I would need to make sure the report was shored up on Monday morning, but I had my best night dispatcher on duty and I knew he wouldn't let me down. I got up, used the bathroom, and waiting for the phone to ring. When it didn't, after about an hour, I grew worried and radioed in to remind my dispatcher to call me when he wasn't too slammed. The phone rang seconds later. My dispatcher said, "The deputy fire chief is here." He said we could all debrief on Monday and that one of the other dispatchers was called in to cover the remainder of his shift. He was upset by the whole situation and needed the rest of the night off. Not uncommon, especially when someone paints the walls while you're on the phone with them. I told him to get some rest and we'd talk on Monday. Something didn't feel right. I texted him and told him to call me as soon as he was in his car. He did. I first made sure he was okay. He said that he was not, but not to worry about him. I told him I'd been there before and if he needed to talk he could. He said, "No, I don't think you have. This whole thing is fucked up and you need to come and listen to the tapes." At this point I'm worried. Like I said, this is my most seasoned, best dispatcher and he's this shaken up. I got in my car and got to the dispatch center as fast as I could. This is what I recall from the report. Times are approximate. 1:17. Report started 1:17. Dispatched medical, fire, police, medical, fire. Do not approach stage at blank street and wait for PD to declare scene safe. 1:18. Chief 2. Engine 3 responding code 3. PD on scene. Scene safe. Send medics and fire ASAP. 1:20. Medics responding. 1:49. Dispatch requests update from on scene. 1:50. Patient DOA suspected overdose. Handing acne over to PD, clearing to quarters at this time. 1:57. Report terminated. My first thought was, what in the fuck is this? Someone fucking died and I get 7-line report. Then I pulled the scariest 911 recording I've ever had the displeasure of listening to. I will recount it to the best of my knowledge. It has been about a year since I have listened to it. Dispatch 911. What is the address of your emergency? Caller: my wife's dead. Can you come get her out of the house? Dispatch: sir, did you say your wife is dead? Caller: yes, she's behind the bedroom door. I can't get it all the way open, but she's dead. Dispatch: sir, I need your address and a good phone number in case we get disconnected. Caller: sure, it's blank. Dispatch: where exactly in the home is your wife? Caller: the bedroom. Dispatch: can you get into the bedroom from a window or door? Caller: nope. Dispatch: hold on, I'm sending help now, please stay on the phone. Dispatch: sir, can you hear me? Caller: yes, I can hear you fine. Dispatch: you said she's behind the door, can you open the door? Caller: no, her body is blocking it. Dispatch: can you tell me what exactly happened? Caller: she's been depressed and took all of her sleeping pills. Caller: they're here, thanks for all your help. Line disconnects. The thing that chilled me about this call was that the husband's voice was apathetic and relaxed. He didn't seem to care that his wife was dead. He was really calling to have the body removed, it would seem. As if his wife's limp, lifeless body was somehow posing him an inconvenience. He had no interest in trying to help save his wife at all. It had my dispatcher fucked up. And it had me fucked up. Reading the police report was much more informative and painted a better picture of what happened on scene. I was also tasked with interviewing everyone that was on scene to put into my comprehensive report. This is a summary of what I recall from the report and my interviews. The summary of events was consistent among all those that responded. A surreal scene. Responders arrived on scene to find the husband in the same lackadaisical state he appeared to be in on the phone. Multiple responders were disturbed by this. Important things noted upon observation of the scene included a full bathtub with a razor blade on the side of the tub and a wine glass that appeared to have fallen into the bath water. It's also important to note that this was the spare bathroom and not the master bathroom. The body was found behind the door of the master bedroom. The police report stated that the husband had been out all day on a hiking trip and he came home and found his wife dead. His explanation for his strange behavior was that he was in shock. However, base records showed that the husband was granted access to base at 10:22 p.m. roughly 3 hours before he claims he discovered his wife's body. Additionally, he stated that his wife was depressed and had taken all of her sleeping pills. Something he could not have known because the empty pill bottle was recovered from the nightstand. It was Ambien and the prescription had been filled by the husband for his wife the previous day. It was appearing to be a murder committed by the husband who had admittedly had marital issues with his wife. These issues were also known to his co-workers and friends. About 2 weeks later, I was told by one of the investigators that they had been taken off the case and it was going to be handled at a higher level. That was the last time I, or anyone I know, saw or heard from the husband again. His Facebook page was taken down. His kids went to live with his late wife's parents and he disappeared without a trace. Everyone working the case was told that he was placed on a leave of hardship. There was never a court-martial, further action, or further information provided to anyone involved in the initial investigation. It still chills me to my core thinking about the whole thing. I was told not to ask questions, and not to interfere with the investigation. It was now out of my hands and it would be handled at the higher level. I will always wonder if the military made the husband disappear and paid off the rest of his wife's family to make it go away. I will never know the answer to this mystery. I can only speculate. But man, just thinking about that 911 call makes me hope that if he did indeed murder her, that in military has him in a dark hole for the rest of his life. TLDR, military husband kills his wife and makes it a suicide. Does not do a good job and ends up getting murdered himself by the government.